Today we're talking about missions. The mission you play depends on the force disposition you choose, and the force dispositions you choose depends on the detachments you are playing. I'm going to do more than read an article to you. I explain the implications and what further questions we need answers to. You can't say, read? Why, I have no need to read. I know a well-dressed man who reads the things to me. Well, that well-dressed vampire also has been playing a long time and can analyze what else we need to know about an edition of 40k. I have been playing since 2nd edition, so this is my 10th version of 40k. First is extra thoughts on detachments that determine the force dispositions, and the force dispositions determine the mission. Detachment building. It's gonna be hard to do a how to play this detachment without also mentioning the side detachments you can take with it, like Outlander Claw and the new Lone Operative detachment, or Outlander Claw and the new hypothetical Metamorph detachment. Then one of the points values of the detachment changes and you can't combine the two of them anymore. So I don't know how I'm going to be able to work that in 11th edition. 10th edition was pick a detachment, away you go, but army building with separate detachments is going to have more of a deck building feel, which isn't as easy for most casual players. Not impossible. Pick this detachment and also pick that detachment, or make an army and then figure out which detachment it would be best in. Part of what turned me away from the current edition of Age of Sigmar was having to think a lot more about the list building, though that came with more limitations. Take this character to get these units. You want these units, you need this character. The good side is that if you don't have 1,000 points of a particular kind of unit, you can still use their focus detachment to get the bonus. Penitent host armies still have Paragon Warsuits and Battle Sisters and Dominions and Novitiates. So it would be nice if we could have a general army and then side specialize into penitent units. If that's an option, we don't know the points of each detachment. I'm expecting that most of the detachments will be 2 points, so you can still use them in incursion-sized games, and the ones that are especially general for the whole army will be 3 points. Things like the Gladius Task Force, or Host of Ascension maybe. But then there's the worry of bloating the game. How many stratagems are available? If you only take one detachment that has 6 stratagems, you just have 6 stratagems. If you have a force of 3 separate 1-point detachments, are these new 1-point detachments going to have 3 stratagems, or 2 stratagems, or 6 stratagems? Are we then stacking up to 18 available stratagems plus core stratagems? Sounds like rules bloat, sounds like we're reintroducing a problem from 9th edition. Can you remember that many stratagems? Or will there be times when you're thinking, hang on, I think there was something like this for that particular detachment, and I think that unit is in that detachment, so it might apply in this situation, and then you flick through the different stratagems to see if they can apply. It may not be as bad as 9th edition, but we're going back towards something I think we should have been past. Is there an option to have no detachments? Spend 0 detachment points. No big reason to, but that could make for a simpler game. And then we have the 5 force dispositions. Will all of the force disposition symbols be available to each faction in one detachment or another? Or will the Genestealer cult, known for their guerrilla tactics, never have a detachment with Taken Hold? We won't know that until we see the symbols attached to the detachments. I don't think we're going to see all of the things we saw in 9th edition, like mixing sub-factions. I think Games Workshop is very unlikely to allow an extensive mix of, let's put the Assault Marines and the Vanguard Veterans in a Blood Angels detachment, and then another detachment is an Ultramarines detachment with Marneus Calgar. I'm assuming that the current unit limitations, especially for Space Marines, will still apply. So I couldn't have a Deathwatch army that is part Black Spear Task Force detachment and part Bastion Task Force detachment with tactical squads and scout squads, because the Deathwatch can't take those units. I also doubt that the Imperial Agents or Freeblade Knights will get a detachment that is there to be allied. Oh, the Sisters don't have Disruption as an option, but the Imperial Agents detachment has that force disposition. Well, now you have Sisters that do have Disruption. I can't quite see that happening. I think allying units will remain the same for the Agents and the Freeblade Knights. But the detachments determine which force symbols you have available. The one you choose and the one your opponent chooses determines which mission you play. Teams tournaments are about to get more interesting. You will be pairing force dispositions to get the mission you want. The mission that you play being decided by the army you pick is a new thing to 40k. There have been a lot of way missions have been done in the past. I made a video on that. Not a very popular one, but very in-depth, and you can watch that to learn more. And Christian von Carmian has been playing since 2nd edition, so he's seen some things. I'm assuming that there will be 15 different missions, like on a grid. Probably that. 5 times 5 isn't 25 different missions, it's 15, because Purge the Foe versus Reconnaissance and Reconnaissance versus Purge the Foe are the same. Numbers hurt my head sometimes, but number go up, I can understand. So when you're comparing your forces, you will take out the card that is your Force Disposition fighting the enemy Force Disposition. So you will have a primary mission that is different to your opponent's primary mission, asymmetric warfare, that sounds a bit more correct for 40k, and you will have to know your mission and score points from it, and know what your opponent is doing and try and prevent them scoring those points. That's going to take some time to learn in the new edition. And the primary mission isn't just do one thing, like take objectives. Do you hold 1, 2, or 3, you get 5, 10, or 15 victory points. They're broken up into separate requirements, or separate ways you can score. The punishment mission for a Purge the Foe Disposition army fighting a Disruption Disposition army. There are 3 different ways to score. One is like Purge the Foe. Pick 3 enemy units that are on objectives, and then destroy them. Each one you destroy is 5 victory points. Or you can think of this like Marked for Death, but you have to pick up to 3 enemy units that are in range of objectives. And then like Marked for Death, you get points if that unit is destroyed, or if it leaves the board. I'm assuming enemy units having left the battlefield this turn can be via casket. It's just a bit of a pain to have to track which enemy units killed one of your units in the previous turn. But like in the 10th edition Purge the Foe mission, you can get points for killing the enemy, you also get points for holding objectives. Can you hold objectives? Can you hold more than your opponent? If you want to practice for this style of play, keep playing that 10th edition mission. What we can see from the Death Trap mission, which is a Disruption Force Disposition against a Take and Hold Disposition, actions are still around. The action here to booby trap an objective is something that completes immediately, instead of at the end of the phase or the end of the turn, so you can keep doing things. You can move into a terrain feature, you can shoot, you can charge, you just do the action in the shooting phase. It doesn't seem to stop you from shooting. That's how it works for challenger cards that are completed immediately in the 10th edition 2025 to 2026 mission deck. So your army can go and keep doing things regardless of what it is. You don't need to have dedicated action monkeys in your army. Though we haven't seen what the secondary missions are, you might still need action people to keep doing the things and not just focus on the primary mission. Because this primary mission also encourages you to kill enemies that are on trapped objectives. So you go forth or infiltrate, trap the objectives, then let the take and hold enemy take, but not hold the objectives as you kill them after they take them. I'm seeing more of a narrative asymmetry of the games coming in here. That's good. How good this primary mission is for the Disruption player is going to depend on how much terrain there is. Well, there will be fixed terrain layouts on maps for each mission. 3 for each of them. This is like the tournament standard coming into normal 40k. Or you can think of it like Age of Sigmar in 40k. There are maps in Age of Sigmar for the missions showing where the terrain is and where the objectives are. So this isn't the most revolutionary thing, but it changes a lot about 40k for how you get your missions. What are the implications then? Will White Dwarf still have a free mission every month? Which Force Dispositions get to play on that? Or is it just a new map? Or is it ignore Force Dispositions, this is the mission, tailor your army to fight in this mission? Or will there be nothing, and the White Dwarf stops giving you missions? How will campaign books or crusade books have missions from now on? Are they going to be even more tailored towards specific armies fighting? It's the Octarius region, so we've got Orcs, we've got Tyranids, we've got Imperial Guard. The first mission tells of a take and hold Imperial Guard army fighting a kill them all Tyranid army. Is it going to be that specific, or are they just going to be general? Here's a map, here's the mission, take whatever Force Disposition you like because it doesn't matter. Each of the mission pairings also has 3 recommended terrain layouts. That's using specific deployments designed to give both players a balanced battlefield to fight through. So they have thought about, in a mission where you need to sabotage bits of terrain, how much terrain is going to be on the table. But at tournaments, tournament organizers won't get to pick the mission you're playing. That'll be determined by your Force Disposition and your opponent's Force Disposition. They also don't get to pick the terrain layout because that's going to change depending on the mission. So that will have to be redone before each game. That doesn't sound great for events. But there might not be that many maps. Rather than 15 missions with 3 maps for each mission for 45 map layouts, we may see that there are 9 maps, and 3 of them are recommended for each mission. So a take and hold Force Disposition versus Disruption, use maps A, B, or F. If you're playing the Death Trap mission, Disruption versus Take and Hold, use maps B, C, or D. Something like that. There is a mention by Games Workshop, if your terrain doesn't match a particular board, you can come up with your own way of laying it out. But it sounds like you need a lot of area terrain, which sounds like it's going to be on particular card layouts. Like we have seen in the video, and that may just be an example, a hypothetical, but there's like 12 by 6 inch square going off eye judgment from the 25mm bases. There's a triangle about the same size, but it's a triangle, and then a thin slip of terrain about 10 inches by 2 inches. If we get to pick our own area terrain, could we have, say, a 7-inch circle? But to represent a ritual site or something, of course. With our terrain layouts, is it just here's where the area terrain is, that's it, and then you can put things on the area terrain, like woods and craters? Are they going to be valid but only as set dressing for area terrain? If we have fixed areas of terrain, and that's going to be on the maps, and the map is determined by the mission, one of 3 maps for each mission, which also has the deployment zones on it, and with narrative and tournaments merging into one this edition, arguably to the detriment of both. The only difference between one board and another board may be if it's a forest board, it has trees on the area terrain instead of ruins. With the same board layouts in everyday terrain and tournaments, looks like the tournament side has won out over the more narrative side. I'm kind of torn. I don't like playing on tournament terrain over and over. I have my own range of terrain. I can set it up in interesting ways, but I've been playing for a long time, so I know what's fair for the different sides. Fixed terrain layouts may be better than the bad examples of terrain that 10th edition's core rules had, which was some stuff in a place, or the same stuff in a different place, but one board is better than the other board. And with non-prescribed terrain layouts, this is how you get WTC and UKTC and Games Workshop board layouts that are all very different except for the L-shaped ruins of 10th edition, which means they're all very much the same, because area terrain made of ruins is the only thing that blocks line of sight. As long as all area terrain, regardless of what's on it, a ruin, a tree, a crater, blocks line of sight, that's better. Then there is the worry, a worry I've expressed in extensive detail before. If area terrain is all you need, do you need terrain? And that leads to very upsetting looking boards. Some of the area terrain is objectives, not all of the area terrain are objectives. You might want to mark them in some way. Oh, I don't know, like with a 40mm objective token in there. And we've got to see in future how you score some of these. How do you hold terrain? Have we really gotten rid of L-shaped ruins in this 11th edition? If you just need to touch onto an area terrain to score it like we do with 10th edition circular objectives, do we also have similar rules to 10th edition where shooting out is not allowed if you're only partly within it? But you can be shot. How do you hide such a model, like a tank or a monster? I mean, how are you anything other than within terrain, but not wholly within terrain if it's a 10-inch by 2-inch slip of terrain, if you're a monster on a big base? In the Death Trap mission, as the take and hold player, how are you going to be within terrain with at least one model, but then also maybe easily destroyed? So you still need big L's. Big walls, 10 inches high, blocking line of sight into the terrain. That's the way of blocking line of sight into the terrain while also being in terrain. With the you can't shoot me over 15 inches and like -1 to hit or -1 ballistic skill when you're shooting at an enemy in that terrain, I don't think it's needed. Having L-shaped walls means wall blocking is still there and charge denial wall exploits that you have to explain by pointing at 3 different rules. At least in 10th edition, I've explained it in 10th edition in another video, but terrain still seems to be something you cannot just move through, as we have twist still around. One of them in the twist deck, almost identical I'm assuming to a 10th edition twist, like Runescape. All units can move through terrain like nimble infantry, which tells us that there will be terrain that blocks movement, and presumably also blocks line of sight. I like the twist deck in the 25-26 mission deck. As long as you're sensible with it, it's fine. Oh, the combat army gets to charge 3d6. Maybe we'll not do that in Tau versus World Eaters. Let's pick a different one. And then there's secondary missions. Okay, secondary missions. They return in much the same way as they have in the current edition, allowing players to choose fixed or tactical objectives to either stick with their favorites or draw cards from a deck to have the highest chance of scoring. But there's a difference. Instead of only having 2 secondary missions at any given time, you draw 2 objective cards every turn. I'm assuming that's on your turn rather than every player turn. Otherwise, going second, I will have drawn 4 cards before my turn properly starts. But keeping hold of cards that are difficult to score right now, but you might score them later, means you don't need the new Order's stratagem. It also may mean that missions like, oh, if it's the first battle round, discard this card. You keep it, you just can't score it in the first round, you will score it later. So you'll draw them and discard them when they're scored. I can absolutely see this leading to less experienced players or players who are not fully awake, which seems to be most people, and they'll be thinking, oh yeah, I forgot, I should have scored this secondary mission. I think I drew it and then I did the thing, and so I should have had the points, as they sift through the 8 cards that are currently in front of them. It may not be that bad. If it's draw 2 and they happen at some point, they do very much become secondary missions. Like, I don't need to think about these right now. These will be things that happen at some point in the game. If it's a deck of 20 cards, you'll get 10 of them through the game. You do them when you can. So narratively, they're not short-term opportunities from high command, but additional orders to be done within the battle. There is a cap on how many victory points you can score in one turn. If there wasn't this, there is the problem of you are absolutely losing the game, you are getting outskilled by your opponent, but then you kill all your opponent's models, and in the final turn, you score everything. The equivalent of 6 10th edition secondaries all at once. So a 15 points from secondaries maximum per battle round is good. Primary missions are also capped at 15 per battle round. I'm wondering if the end of the battle step is going to get counted as its own battle round, or if that somehow gets tied into the last battle round. Because that punishment mission gives you 8 victory points at the end of the game. The other mission does not. The Death Trap has no extra scoring at the end of the game. So I don't know if that's going to be its own separate thing, or just tied into the final battle round. I do hope there's rules that explain which one it is. So primary missions are a maximum of 15 victory points per battle round, and a total cap of 45. Secondary missions, a maximum of 15 points per battle round on secondary missions, for a total of 45. I wonder if you can choose to not score a secondary mission, even though you did it, because you've already reached the cap of 15. Do you have to do the thing and then throw the card away? Or can you keep the card? That'll be an interesting point, because currently in 10th edition, if you complete a secondary mission and score any victory points from it, you discard the card as done. If you can choose to not score the points but keep the card, that becomes a tactical thing of, oh wait, oh I didn't realize I'd reached the 15 points. Or I got to 14 points and I was going to score 5 from this. I'll not score 1 extra point and I'll keep this card because it's very easy to do next turn. But the 45-45 is in contrast to 10th edition's 50 primary points and 40 secondary points maximum. No mention so far of a 10 points painting bonus. It would be really good if it was gone. Only the most unlikable of players tried to apply it. It wasn't affecting tournaments because they have a requirement of painting to enter the army. So it's not a tournament problem, it's only a new person gets penalized for trying to play the game without fully painting an army problem. The secondary mission and primary mission card deck will be released with the 11th edition starter set, called Armageddon. Much like the Leviathan cards were for the first mission deck of 10th edition, they were released in the Leviathan starter set. As these cards are coming in the core rules, I'm expecting that there won't be a list of secondaries in the core book and I can roll to generate them, like we did in 7th edition. Then you write down a list of what you get, pen and paper, cross them off when completed. A way of playing these games without having the card deck. It seems you will need the card deck. So what does Games Workshop do in a year's time for the next round of the card deck? Slight tweaks on the missions? Slight changes to the maps? Does that mean there'll be no FAQ on the cards until then? I very much doubt it. FAQs will absolutely be needed for when we see that, yes, this particular mission, the disruption player always seems to beat the take and hold player. So we've got to change the numbers of the victory points that they score. That'll get an FAQ. Then, much like the Pariah Nexus mission deck had missions almost exactly like the Leviathan mission deck, it'll be a slight tweak on that. Maybe with different twists. What we're not doing is faction-specific secondaries, like 9th edition, which is good, because Games Workshop's idea of balance at the end of 9th edition was about making some secondaries easier, or stopping some units from doing certain other ones to make them harder. Oh, the Catan are too strong, so Catan can't do these 2 Necron-only secondaries. Oh, Grey Knights are doing terribly. Well, one of their secondaries is now, if you used a psychic weapon on your turn, you get 4 victory points. Yippee! That did nothing to balance regular games of 40k that weren't using those secondaries, or Crusade, where those secondaries were not used. The terrain maps are going to be the most important thing in this deck, for the meta of 40k. If you can't be shot over 15 inches, and it's -1 to hit them, and the board is absolutely covered in terrain, the way it is now at tournaments, or even more so there's even more terrain, does that really mean combat armies just win the game? And it doesn't matter about Games Workshop's effort with missions? It's the maps that will determine how good these missions are. L-shaped ruins, no L-shaped ruins. Terrain on the board or not on the board, it's worth considering. Have a deeper look into how it could be. And have a great day of 40k.